Hello everyone and welcome to the game you've all been waiting for. It's Liren versus Alireza Firouzja. The two classical games have been drawn, now they go into the rapid tie breaks. For the first rapid game, Ding gets the white pieces and let's just see what happened. So Ding opens with knight to f3, we have d5, d4 by Ding, knight to f6, we have c4 and e6. The Queen's Gambit Declined is on the board. We might as well start every video with the Queen's Gambit Declined on the board. Knight to c3 and bishop to e7 now. We have bishop to f4, so not going for bishop to g5. Black would immediately go for something like c5, but we have castles by Alireza. E3 and knight b to d7. Bishop to e2, Ding also prepares the castle, and now Ding captures on c4. Now that the bishop has been developed, you force the bishop to lose the tempo. Bishop captures on c4, not right away, but Ding castles. There's no rush, as b5 you cannot defend it, the knight already covers b5. c5 by Firouzja, d captures on c5, knight captures, and now bishop captures on c4. Nicely recapturing that pawn and offering a queen trade. Alireza trades. We have queen captures on d1, rook captures on d1, and now b6, putting more defense to the knight here on c5, and also preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop with bishop to b7, and it's not a problem since you don't have to worry about the rook infiltrating. Both of the knights are covering the d7 square. Bishop to d6 by Ding, offering a trade of bishops, and you can't really not trade here. For example, something like rook to e, defending knight b5 goes after c7 or something like that. So best is just a trade. Rook captures on d6 and now bishop to b7. And here rook 8 to d1. It's interesting. There are a lot of games have reached this position. For example, Rajabov had this endgame against Meyer. That game ended in a draw. Wesley So also had it against Rajabov. That ended in a draw. Smirnov had it against Yakovenko. Ariantari had it against Ho Yifan, and all of those games ended in a draw. But this is Ding versus Firouzja, and this is a rapid game. So let's see how the game continues. First, we have bishop captures on f3. So giving up the light square bishop to mess up Ding's pawn structure. And now rook f to c8. Just developing the rook, and bishop back to e2. So there is a game where bishop to f1 was played, also a game where, well, not that, but f4 was played, but bishop to e2 is a new move, and it is as of move 16 that we have a completely new game on our hands. So as f4 was not played, like in the games we already mentioned, Firouzja prevents f4 by playing g5. So Ding still wants to play f4. You want to play f4, bring your bishop over to this diagonal. So he prepares it. Rook to d4. Now f4 captures will be met with rook captures, not there. And king to f8. Improving the position of the king. The king is coming to e7. Ding continues with his plan with f4. G captures. That's not a capture. G captures on f4, and now rook captures on f4, making room for the bishop on f3. King to e7 and bishop to f3. And here you don't want to play something like rook to b8. It's a very passive move. You're allowing knight to b5. So here better is rook to g8 check. This is what Alireza plays. King to f1, and now the other rook comes to the open d file. Rook 8 to d8. So now the black rooks are much more active. And the black's position is excellent here. We have rook f back to d4, offering a trade, and Alireza trades. We have rook captures on d4, and now knight c to d7. Here Alireza is making room for his rook on the c5 square. From c5, the rook will be a very active piece. We have h3 by Ding, and now rook to c8 as planned. King e2, improving the position of the king. Rook to c5, and now comes rook to b4. Now Ding wants to play rook to b5 and offer a trade of rooks. We have knight to e5, now going after the bishop. Every trade is in Alireza's favor, as soon as he trades down and gets this into a favorable drawn ending, let's say, they can go into the second rapid game where Firouzja will have the white pieces. Rook b5 as planned, and now knight captures. You don't want to trade here. If you trade here, then you get knight captures. You already have some targets on the queen side. So here, first knight, knight captures on f3, king captures on f3, and now knight to d7, saying, okay, we can trade, but we're going to trade on c5. We have king e2 by Ding, a5 now, and here f4. We have f5 by black, and now king to d3. And now Firouzja can no longer wait with his rook on c5. For example, a slow move will be met with rook captures, knight captures with check, and now king is already on c4 going to b5, and you will have problems here on the queen side. So here Alireza goes back, rook to c6, and now e4. With knight c5 check, preparing to trade everything on e4. We have king e3, and now f captures on e4. Knight captures on e4, knight captures, and king captures. And here, king to f6. So here we have seemingly a completely drawn endgame. 4 pawns each, 3 pawn islands each, 1 rook each, 1 king each. And, well, the only difference is Ding's position is much more active. His king is more active. You can see that he's already sort of infiltrating the other half of the board. And Firouzja's rook is pretty much stuck here on these two squares, guarding the b6 pawn. So if Ding wants, he can claim a draw here. If he wants to try, he can try and grind the position, which he will do, as Alireza is very low on time. King f3. With rook to d6, Alireza can only repeat these two moves and maybe move a king here and there. King g4, with rook back to c6, h4 now, rook back to d6, and b3. King to g6 with a4, Ding improving the position as much as he can before he decides what he will do. We have king to f6 and now king to f3. Rook to c6 and now king to e4. And here rook back to d6. So if Ding wants to draw here, he can draw. If he wants to try something, he has to allow the black rook to become active, and this is exactly what he does. He plays rook to h5. He gives black the opportunity to activate his rook, but Alireza is not interested. He plays king to g6, pushing the rook back. With rook to g5 check, king to f6, and now rook back to b5. Rook back to c6 by Firouzja, and now f5, trading this pawn as well. E captures, rook captures with check, and king to g6, and now even h5 with check. King to h6, and now king to d4. So now the rook doesn't have all that much to do, and the king is pretty much stuck here on h6 and the g7. He has to go by those two squares. King to g7 with rook to g5 check, king to h6, and now rook back to d5. We have king to g7 and now rook to d7 check. King to h6 and now rook to b7. Ding's idea is, okay, you can capture on h5. I'm then going to capture on h7 with check and just return to b7. And here, best for Alireza is rook to c8. You have to give up the b6 pawn if white would grab it. For example, if white grabs it with check, only then you grab this pawn, but you keep this pawn. The rook is no longer on b7, so now you have a passed h pawn. Alireza, on the other hand, played rook to f6. He decided to just keep defending everything, but now he left a very crucial square undefended, the c4 square, and Ding grabs it. Now Ding is threatening king to b5. And here, you have to prevent king to b5 by playing rook to f3. With rook to f3, then if the king comes to b5, for example, if or you could capture here with check. If king h5, then you will play rook to b5 check, king will go back, king g4, and now rook captures on a5, but now you have h5, and you will start pushing your passed pawn and fight for a draw this way. However, Alireza played rook to f4 check, and now Ding gets the b5 square. With king to b5, king captures on h5, and now rook captures on h7 with check. King g5, and now not capturing on b6 right away and allowing rook to b3. First rook to b7. This is how you want to capture this pawn. Rook to b4 check with king to a6, and now rook captures on b3. We have rook captures on b6, and now, of course, if you trade, this is a winning position for Ding, so not an option. We have rook back to d3. And here Ding plays king captures on a5. And Alireza played king to f5. Here Alireza was extremely low on time, I believe below half a minute, something like that, and Ding had over 3 minutes, some 3.5 minutes, and Ding is actually winning in this position, but there is only one move that wins. So feel free to pause the video and try to find this winning idea for Ding while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations, as no one found this move. Ding didn't find it, Magnus didn't find it, who was, joining in live with Jan Gustafsson, and no one pretty much found it. The idea is king to b5. If you found it, then really you are just an incredible endgame player. Point is that after king to b5, king e5, you play king to c6, and now after the rook goes after, well, the passed pawn here, you have rook check. King has to move, and now a5, and your pawn is protected. Next, you just play king b7, and you promote the pawn to a queen. Seems fairly simple, but Ding had 3.5 minutes on the clock. He used 3-something minutes, and he didn't find it. He played king to a6, and then now king to e5 by Firouzja, with a5 by Ding, and now you have to play king to d5. You have to take away the c6 square from white's rook, but here Alireza played rook to d7, and now as the c6 square is free for Ding's rook, Ding just played rook to c6. He made room for his king, and now he's ready to push it. King d5, but now king d5 is too late. We have king to b6, and now rook to d8, going after a8 square, but it is too late, maybe. With a6, rook to b8 check, going for some crazy tricks, because here you have to be careful. For example, you could either go rook, king c7 or king to a7. Problem with king to a7, yes, you're hoping for captures, and then you promote this pawn into a queen. But after this king to a7 move, black can just play rook b2, and now you will not you will not have an easy time winning this position. For example, if you try something like, let's say, rook b6, to go after this rook, you're going to go rook f2. King b7, make room for your passed pawn, rook f7 check. King c8, you're going to go king c5, attack the rook. Rook b7, you're going to go rook f8 check. King c7, you're going to go rook to f6, go after the pawn, and after a7, now again, rook f7 check. King d8, offering a rook for a queen, but rook f8 check. And now finally, after king to e7, you're just going to go rook to h8, and the white has no way of winning this. You cannot move to a8. If you go back with the queen, with the king, black will just repeat with the checks. If you don't do anything, then you don't win. For example, if you try this, then just rook h7 check will pick up the pawn on a7. It's a very tricky idea. So here you have to be careful. King a7 doesn't work. King to c7. This is what Ding played. We have rook to a8, and now king to b7, and it was in this position on move 67 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game. The first rapid game goes to Ding, as there is nothing more to do here. After you move the rook, let's say rook e8, a7, whatever you play, check, you block, you go there, just queen, and now, well, it's just winning. So yeah, a really intense game, and it just shows that what an excellent player Alireza Firouzja is, pushing Ding to his utmost limits to find some winning ideas in completely drawn positions. And this is where Magnus complimented him during his call to the Chess24 live coverage. He said that it was really impressive how Ding was able to grind out this win out of a completely drawn position, something Magnus Carlsen is always said of doing, that he will create something out of nothing. So here Ding definitely did create something out of nothing. It was in a rapid game, but still. So that's game 1. I do hope you enjoyed it. Game 2 is already being played. I have no idea what the position looks like as I'm recording this video, but probably we will also be checking out game 2. So I do hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Alex Larman for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the World Cup, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and so on. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.